Rent for my New York City apartment went up by $1,000 a month. That's what's going on over here. So let me take you back.
Hello besties, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, we'll be talking about the rent prices have gone too high. So you guys have put the videos together so that you watch and learn. I'll be back to share my true
Rent
sons.
for my New York City apartment went up by $1,000 a month. That's what's going on over here. So let me take you back to 2021, where I moved into this apartment with an 18-month lease. It was a four-bedroom apartment in Harlem, New York, reasonable rate, and I had a roommate, and it was working out. So it was myself plus my kids, and I had a roommate, and they had a partner. So I was like, okay, cool. I had like kind of we split the space down the middle, and it was cool. Like it worked out for all of the parties involved, and so my stupid ring light just died. Whatever, but it was working out for all of us, and it was cool. Then at the 18 months was over, the rent renewal was for an additional $100 a month. All right, cool. $100 a month. We split that down the middle, no problem. Then came the second rent renewal. So now we're 2.5 years in. So the first lease was 18 months, the second lease was a year. So we're about 2.5 years in. And this rent renewal, they said, hey, your rent is going to go up by $1,000 a month. And they told me this 45 days before the rent was supposed to be renewed, while I was asking them for months and months before. We could get into that if we need to. But long story short, they gave me the new rent amount, and I'm just like, can we negotiate? So this was a 37% increase. I reached out to them saying, hey, can we negotiate? How about a 10% increase? They're like, no. And no. And I was just like, okay. So thankfully, I was able to coordinate and get a new apartment. But then here's a fun spin: that apartment needed to have some repairs done. They started the repairs, and as they found out about, as they were repairing it, they found out it needed more and more repairs. And so it's now almost been a year. I'm in a temporary place right now because I was waiting on my permanent apartment. But if you saw my recent reels, or if you go back to my TikToks from before, it shows, like, the ghetto things I have in my house, because I refuse to buy anything new until I move into my final apartment. But this whole process has just been so ghetto to understand and see what has happened in the New York City housing market, and how that it is legal. It is 100% legal for them to raise my rent by $1,000 a month with that 45-day warning period. Yes. Actually, they could have given me less warning than that. According to the legal representatives that I spoke to, they could have given me less warning than that. It did not matter. And I had to either pay that money or get out of there. So yeah, that's what's happening over here, child. And if y'all want me to elaborate, feel free to ask me questions, because I had to do a whole bunch of research to figure out, one, is this legal? Two, what am I going to do about this? And now I'm finally at the other side, and I cannot wait to finally move into my new apartment, because
I would have to disagree that $2,100 a month is damn cheap. And a lot of people have commented this, but it's just not true. So I'm going to explain why. The national average salary in the United States right now is $59,000, and $59,000 after taxes, your take home every month is about $3,800. So if you are a household or a single person living off of that one salary, that rent right there is more than half of what you're making. And that's just the average. So of course there's going to be people that are well below the average who cannot even afford a $2,100 rent that you guys are saying is cheap. Now, I'm not ungrateful at all. I'm blessed that we are able to afford this $2,100 of rent, which we got at this rate because we moved during COVID, during the height in 2020. We moved there in 2020 during the height of COVID, and they were having a really good deal because they were desperate to get people in. Now, unfortunately, that rent is about $3,000. But why are we normalizing? Why are we normalizing $2,100 a month of rent as being cheap when the majority of people in the United States don't even make enough to afford this type of rent? So many people have roommates. So many people who are families and have multiple children are living in an apartment instead of living in a house, which is what we are saving for. We're never going to own this apartment. We're all just throwing our money away renting instead of buying. We have no buying power right now as millennials and as Gen Zers. Why aren't we able to afford to buy things like the generations before us did? How come we're the ones that are screwed? I was born and raised in California. It's not going to be possible for me to buy a home here because the average price of houses here, and these are old houses, like 1950s houses, is about $700,000. I thought I made decent money. Last year was the most I ever made, right? I thought that we would be able to afford a house. We're not going to be able to afford a house that's almost $1 million. It's just not going to happen. So I understand people saying $2,100 is cheap. It's not cheap. It's cheaper than other places, but we are all of us are being overcharged for rent. And these houses are insanely expensive. And there's like no chance of most people ever even being able to afford to buy a house in their lifetime. That's sad.
One thing about us, we're gonna call maintenance. If there's a problem in our unit, we're gonna call maintenance. We pay rent monthly and it's high in California. So we're calling maintenance for any little thing that happens in our unit. I don't care. And they're getting tired of us, but we pay rent on time and it's high and it's not updated. So come.
That's the video, guys. So I'm just here also to share my true sense, like what I think about today's video. Okay, so rent prices are going up every day. So, and it's becoming harder for the average person to afford a decent place to live. Whether you are in a big city or even in a small town, landlords and property owners are raising prices at ridiculous rate. Wages are not keeping up and people are struggling just to keep a roof over their heads. Many young adults are forced to stay with their parents longer, not because they want to, but because affording an average apartment on their own is nearly impossible. Meanwhile, those who do manage to rent a place often spend the majority of their income on housing, leaving little rooms for savings, emergencies, or even basic necessities. It's a cycle that keeps people stuck, living paycheck to paycheck with no real opportunity to build the future. The cost of living is increasing across the board, but rent is one of the biggest burdens people face. In many places, rent prices are doubling within just a few years, and there's no regulation to keep things in check. Landlords argue that the property taxes and maintenance costs are rising, but that doesn't justify the extreme rent hikes. Some landlords raise rent simply because they can, knowing people have no choice but to pay. This kind of unchecked greed is leaving people with fewer options, either that downgrade to unsafe living conditions and get multiple roommates or relocate to places for from work and family. And for those who live in areas with high demand, the competition for housing is brutal. Renters are binding against each other just to secure a place to live, which only drives prices even further. Another major issue is the lack of affordable housing. New apartment complexes are being built, but they are mostly luxury apartments with prices that are completely out of reach for the average renter. Instead of creating a housing solutions for people in the middle and lower brackets, developers focus on high-end units that cater to wealthy. This creates housing imbalance where everyday workers can't find a place to live near their jobs, forcing them to commute to long distance just to survive. In some areas, landlords are converting rentals units into short-term vacation rentals, taking even more homes off the market and making it even harder for people to find long-term housing. The rise in rent prices also have a ripple effect on the economy. When people spend more of their paycheck on rent, they have less money to support local businesses, save for the future, or even invest in their own personal growth. This contributes to financial instability and mental stress as people constantly worry about whether they'll be able to afford their next rent payment. For many, eviction is a real threat, even for those who are working full-time jobs. It's no longer just a problem for low-income households, even middle-class individuals are struggling to keep up with the rise cost of living. Government intervention could help, but in many cases, policies favor landlords and developers over renters. Rent control laws exist some areas, but they are often limited or easily bypassed. Meanwhile, wages remain stagnant and inflation continue to rise, making it harder for people to keep up with the increasing cost of living. Some cities have introduced affordable housing programs, but the demand far outweighs the supply, leaving thousands on waiting lists with no real solutions in sight. There is also the issue of corporations buying a rental property and turning them into massive profit-making machines, making it even harder for regular people to find and afford a decent home. The impact of high rent prices is particularly harsh on young people who are just starting out. Many millennials and Gen Z renters find themselves drowning in expenses, unable to save for the home, pay off student loans, or even afford basic necessities. Some have given up the idea of ever owning a home, while others are delaying major life milestones like getting married or having children because they simply can't afford it. This is not just individual issue, it's a generational crisis that will have long-term consequences for society. When people can't afford stable housing, it affects their mental health, productivity, and overall being. The housing market has become a battleground where renters are the ones losing. Some people even turning to alternative solutions like van life, tiny homes, or living in shared spaces just to avoid the crashing burden of high rent. But these are not long-term solutions. People shouldn't have to choose between financial security and having a place to live. The idea of the American dream or just the simple hope of working hard to afford a comfortable life is simping away for many, all because of how unaffordable rent has become. It's frustrating to see how so many people struggle in one large real estate companies and wealth investors continue to profit off of their unnecessary human need. Housing is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Yet the system is set up to feel like a privilege rather than a right. And the worst part is that there is no clear end in sight. Unless something changes, rent prices will continue to climb and more people will be pushed into financial distress. This is why conversations about housing reform, rent control, and fair wages are more important than ever. The reality is, if you are not feeling the impact of high rent prices yet, you will at a point or some point. This is issue affect everyone, whether direct or indirect. If people can't afford to live near their jobs, businesses will struggle to find workers. If renters are barely skipping by the entire economy, suffering because people are not spending more money elsewhere, is a crisis that needs attention, and ignoring it will only make things worse. So what can we do? Raising wages matches the cost of living is one of the solutions, but that one won't solve the problem. Rent caps, increased tenant protection, and insecurities, affordable development don't necessarily to stop this crisis from going up. It's time for renters to speak up and demand the change. The more people voice their concerns, the harder it will be for those in power to ignore society. Okay, social media also helps that. So do that. So bye guys, thank you for watching.